Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talking Smack. Thanks for sticking with us after our unexpected break. With me this week is a very dear friend of mine, Matt Leparata. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And we are going to be doing the Black Panther review this week, but first we have the news. Because we've been gone so long, we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit on some older news. Most of it is trailers because we haven't been around since the Super Bowl. First things first, I'm going to put a timestamp in the episode description. This is a little bit of spoiler discussion for Avengers Infinity War. You and I have already discussed this. We're going to put a timestamp in here in the description. If you don't want to hear the spoiler talk, skip ahead, look at the time or the description, and skip ahead to wherever the description says. For those of you sticking through the spoiler discussion, we've had some new toys for Avengers Infinity War come through. And from what I've seen, the most kind of spoilery thing is we've known that Thor is going to be getting a new weapon through the poster that was revealed at Comic-Con, but we didn't know what it was. Was it going to be Yarnbjorn, his axe, or was it going to be some kind of return of Mjolnir? Well, it looks like it's going to be a little bit of both, because he's getting Stormbreaker, which is the name of his new hammer, but it also has an axe on the end. So it looks a little bit like Beta Ray Bill's hammer with a little bit of the Ultimate Hammer mixed in there as well.
Yeah, so Stormbreaker is like the name of Beta Ray Bill's sort of second hammer that Odin made for him in the comics and Walt Simonson's run. But you pointed out that one is a little more rounded. This one is a little more of like a
square.
A square kind of looks from the toy that I looked at. I only kind of didn't do a ton of investigative glancing, whatever that means, but it looks like it's kind of like pieced together, like it kind of looked like a stick, like maybe it was tied together in some way.
Yeah, there's like a vine or something holding it together.
So it's in that way it sort of seems like it's different than both of the references that you were drawing on, but it's an interesting little kind of nod, I guess, to two different versions of Thor.
They obviously pay homage to Beta Ray Bill with the name. It's got a lore in comics, and then obviously they also bring in the ultimate design, but it's obviously a little bit different because, like you said, it's like a stick with some vines holding the actual hammer part together.
Yeah.
So the question becomes: is it Uru? Is it the pieces of Mjolnir, or is it something new?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was going to bring that up. I don't necessarily need to see this in detail in Avengers, but what is it? What's it made of? I think it would be very cool if it was just like, oh, here's a couple of pieces of the hammer that was shattered in Thor Ragnarok, just sort of cobbled together to make something that he can swing around.
The concept art they have on the front of the box, that's about as far as my research went. The hammer looks pretty big compared to Thor. Like it looks about the size of like Gimli's axe.
Sure.
So it looks a little bigger. I should say in relation to like Gimli to Thor. Obviously,
right.
Thor is supposed to be about 4.5 feet taller
as
than
opposed to a small
Gimli.
dwarf.
Yeah, but the axe is pretty large even for Thor holding it, or the hammer, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty big, so the toy obviously is not to size or to scale.
Look like a little mallet. The toy looks like a little mallet you would get in like a Fisher Price.
But it's interesting to see that they're not giving him Yarnbjorn, just the straight up axe, but they're going to go with some kind of combination with Stormbreaker. It's really cool. We're starting to see some more stuff from Infinity War leak out. I'm trying to avoid as many spoilers as I can.
Same.
But the minute I saw Thor's weapon, I was like, I gotta know.
Well, I'm curious to know exactly because we don't know. For as far as we know, Chris Hemsworth is out. After the next movie.
He did a late night with Seth Meyers, I think, and he said his contract is done unless they come up with a script for Thor 4 that's on par with what they did in Ragnarok. He's done.
Yeah, and I think that's the case of everybody. Everybody's up after Avengers 4, whatever they call it.
Yeah, so I still think it's going to be Secret Wars.
It's interesting to see that they're just kind of... I was going to say that it's interesting that they are sticking with it, but also... It's not like they have to deal with it in another Thor movie as far as we know either. So doesn't seem like it's that hard to stick with it. So it's interesting, but also it's like, okay, it's whatever.
So I think we're going to end the spoiler talk there. For those of you that are skipping ahead, welcome back. Moving on in the news, we had Alita Battle Angel push back from July 20th of this year to December 21st of this year.
Need more time to work on those eyes.
Got to make them bigger.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not too surprised. There's a lot of kickback, whatever you want to. There's a lot of people really not intrigued by this movie or swearing off this movie just because I honestly, I say this every week we talk about this. I thought it was going to be a sequel to Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
It is a weird look.
The way it
the trailer
opens
looks weird,
and how glossy everything is, even the real people. I thought it was just really good CGI. I'm like, oh, are they going to try and do a sequel to Spirits Within for some reason?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm curious to see how it does, just because it's based on a popular anime, and so many of those, whether or not they've been announced or actually come to fruition, have been met with such backlash by fans. Part of that is the casting and the perspective casting, where it's like, let's cast a bunch of white people in this Japanese anime.
And then try and get around the casting by saying that they were once a Japanese person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of it is like, is that if they're just, people are just like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I just want to watch the anime.
Well,
But
as we'll discuss later with Black Panther, doors might be opening to get more representation.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I sort of am of the mind where, like, and I know that I'm saying this when I'm about to gush over Black Panther in a little bit, but like, it's okay to let the anime be the anime. You don't have to remake it. So that's why I sort of dismiss all those things myself. But also, like, just if you're going to do it, just cast people that resemble the story.
Yeah,
right?
not like Hellboy, where they have an Asian American guy and then they cast the first Dario Naharis. I forget his name. Ed Skrein.
Yeah.
You know, he's supposed to be Asian American. Ed Skrein. Ed Skrein looks good for that role.
Yeah. So I mean, I sort of went on a tangent there, but I feel like that people are against it partially because they're just remaking things for whatever reason to make money, but also because they don't seem to be doing justice to the
source material. Yeah. And then other things that were pushed back, and I should mention both of these are Fox properties. The Predator was moved from August 3rd, which has kind of been the Guardians of the Galaxy window. Mm-hmm. They really hit it big in that window back in 2014, I believe.
Yeah, it's when the first one came out.
That first weekend of August has kind of been a good window for places. I think that's also where Suicide Squad came out. You know, those movies did really well. The Predator was going to hit there, which is being directed by Shane Black, Iron Man 3's Shane Black, who is also the screenwriter for the original Predator movie, plus obviously movies like Lethal Weapon and The Nice Guys, I think was the one.
I believe that was him. Yeah. He also did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I don't know if he wrote it, but he directed it.
He wrote it too. But yeah, those are all fantastic movies in my opinion. I'm excited for The Predator. I think it is guaranteed to have an R rating, but I think they're moving it to September 14th to hit that It window.
Sure.
Because I believe that's where It came out last year, and I think they're trying to hit that mid-Halloween vibe or pre-Halloween.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, I actually honestly forgot until we were talking over the notes or looking at the notes that there was a new Predator movie coming out. Like, I totally forgot. But hearing, being reminded that Shane Black is doing it, that makes me pretty intrigued because he's a pretty solid director. So hopefully that's a good move for them. Yep. Is there anything else coming out that August 3rd that you know of that would
I don't know if anything else is taking that spot. If you want to go off a little bit on your love for Shane Black or something, I can take a quick look.
No, I mean that's all right. I'm just curious to know, because sometimes it seems like they push stuff out of like, oh, we were going to come out and it turns out that Star Wars is coming out that day or something, where you're going to get slaughtered if you release against a movie that is, very obviously going to be the draw that weekend or something.
So I did pull it up. The other movies coming out that weekend are The Equalizer 2, starring Denzel Washington.
Okay.
Did not know that movie was getting a sequel. Yep. The Spy Who Dumped Me.
Okay.
Starring Kate McKinnon, Mila Kunis, and Sam Heughan. Two best friends unwittingly become entangled in an international conspiracy.
All right.
Intrigue.
That's a decent cast, but I don't know.
And then Christopher Robin, starring Ewan McGregor, Haley Atwell, and Jim Cummings. I might just see that for the cast.
Yeah.
Christopher Robin, now an adult, returns to the 100-acre wood where Winnie the Pooh lives. If Jim Cummings is actually cast as Winnie the Pooh in that movie, and it's some weird... Is he
like a cranky old dad?
No, he's
coming
Winnie
back
the Pooh.
as... No, Christopher Robin.
Oh,
sorry.
Christopher Robin.
Cranky old dad is this doing...
Winnie the Pooh is the cranky old dad.
I would watch that. I'm just curious if they're doing like a straight up like Hook.
Disney's version of Ted.
Yeah.
Just call it Pooh.
It's like the H really small.
Yeah, all it says is Christopher Robin, now an adult, returns to the 100-Acre Wood. So
All right.
I'm guessing it's probably some kind of coming-of-age thing where
Yeah.
he accepts his role as Christopher Robin.
Shows up, he eats some imaginary food. He meets the punk kid that is going to teach him how to be Christopher Robin again.
I think you're thinking of Hook.
Yeah, well, explicitly.
So yeah, August 3rd is pretty much vacated. I'm guessing The Equalizer 2 will take that weekend.
Yeah.
But
So there's not like a big movie coming out. They just probably needed more time, or that was a better weekend for him or something.
Yeah, I think it's probably what I just said about the pre-Halloween weekend, trying to take advantage of that It window.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into our trailers. First one I have up, we're going to start strong, and we're going to talk about the Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer.
That was a good trailer.
That was a really good trailer. One of the things that I've heard a lot of people that I trust talking about this movie is, I forget the name of the director right now.
Oh, I don't know off the top of my... I can't remember it either.
I can't.
The Ant-Man director, you mean?
Yeah.
Peyton Reed, is that it?
Peyton Reed, yes, you're right. A lot of people are very curious to see what he can do with his own movie, because he kind of took over Edgar Wright's movie.
And it turned out the first one, it was okay. It wasn't bad.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun, and it turned out, I think, considering as much of a sort of story development that movie had, and knowing what and even though we don't know for sure, but like imagining what we could have had with a director like Edgar Wright, Ant-Man, it was about as good as you could expect with everything surrounding it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am very interested to see sort of sink or swim on Peyton Reed's own merits, rather.
Yeah, and he's got the full team back as well, as far as I understand. So I don't think there should be a huge drop off. Obviously, he's not going to be working off of an Edgar Wright script or blueprint, or however much of Edgar Wright's script actually made it in. I can pretty much guarantee you everything Luis did in that movie was Edgar Wright.
I would believe that. I would buy that. Yeah.
Which that stuff was great. That was the best bit in the entire movie.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. The Wasp costume looks great. The internet thinks that her chest piece looks like a penis, but what on the internet doesn't look like a penis?
I guess I didn't make much note of it. I've seen that trailer a few times now. I haven't noticed. Does it particularly look phallic, or?
Yeah, you've got like a long pointed down thing and then two circular things for the boob plate, but
I guess that's true. That's sort of how it's, just how you described it, that's sort of how it's always looked in the comics.
Yeah. So it's just people nitpicking.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are disappointed that it's not the same design that we saw at the end of Ant-Man, but it also makes sense that after a year or two that there would be modifications made.
Right.
So it's not as vibrant, but I think from what we've seen so far, it does look really good.
Yeah, and then that trailer is very heavy on Wasp action, and I think that's all
it looks like
solid stuff.
It looks like Scott Lang is incapacitated for the first act or two of the movie, because obviously he's going to suffer some repercussions for joining in the Civil War.
The trailer draws very heavily, like several shots from that movie.
Yeah, the big question is, does this take place before or after Infinity War? I feel like it pretty much has to take place before Infinity War.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on how Infinity War plays out, where...
Unless they revert time or something, it really makes no sense that we're going to be seeing him getting placed under house arrest and everything like that. Yeah,
unless there's like some flashbacks or something. Mm-hmm. The first one was sort of like a weird postscript to Age of Ultron. That was the one that came out after Avengers, right? So maybe somehow this one will be the same. But if the movie is about them on the run, I guess we haven't seen Infinity War yet, so we don't know how they factor into it.
Unless Infinity War almost completely takes place on a separate planet, I don't see how this movie really can remain as calm as it can be. Sure. So I don't know. I don't like speculating, because obviously we don't have the inside look, and it's fun to speculate, but at the same time you're putting yourself out there, and we're on the internet. So.
Right. Why else does a guy have a podcast if he can't speculate out into the wild? But I think that's actually an interesting idea that I hadn't considered before. I just assumed that whatever happens in Infinity War, it will leave it in a position that now Ant-Man's going to have an adventure. But that would be an interesting way to take it, because we don't know. We know they're both going to show up. I think possibly... Are they all three of them going to show up?
I believe the Wasp won't be showing up until Avengers 4.
Okay.
Just because Peyton Reed said he thinks the Wasp deserves to show up first in her own movie.
I buy that.
Not as a very small part to a big ensemble.
Sure, that makes sense. So we don't know what Infinity War is going to do with with Paul Rudd and Ant-Man, all that stuff. But it would be an interesting move for them to go, okay, well, that movie, which may or may not end on a huge cliffhanger, did its thing. Now let's rewind in a few minutes and see what this guy was up to.
I still think I still think Infinity War ends on a cliffhanger, but it's going to be Carol Danvers showing up.
I would buy that. And I mean, not. I guess I think even though they're no longer Infinity War parts 1 and 2, I think they were still
it's still
shot
back
to back. They were still like a two-parter. So
yeah, I know they're holding back on the title of Avengers 4 because they don't want to reveal like what happens at the end of Infinity War. So we'll probably get a title reveal either shortly after or at San Diego Comic-Con.
Sure. I would not be surprised if like the end of Infinity War was like to be continued in Avengers, Captain America's really dead, you guys, or whatever they call it.
That's very true. I mean, they could even drop the trailer in the post-credits because they shot the whole thing back to back. So
well, that's what they did with way back when with the first Captain America. The post-credit scene of that was an Avengers trailer, essentially.
Very true. And I remember being really pissed about not getting the trailer in the trailer section.
Yeah. Right.
And I turned to our buddy Nick, and I was just like, oh man, no Avengers trailer. He's like, just wait. And then we got through the post-credits, and some assembly required. Oh my god.
I was honestly, and I don't know why I was thinking this, because I was sort of curious about it, or I was thinking back and they didn't do this for Avengers 2, but like this is Black Panther is the last movie before Infinity War. So I was like, maybe this post-credit scene will be like, surprise, here's some teaser footage. Spoilers, it wasn't. For some reason I wasn't going in, I was like, that would be cool.
That would be really nice, but I mean, we already had plenty of Infinity War stuff show up. So it's not surprising. And the post-credit stuff we got was really great.
Yeah, which we'll get to, I'm sure.
So the next trailer we have is Venom, which I might as well just put movie. Because this could be anything. This could even be the worst part of the Black Panther movie was I had to sit through this trailer twice. All right, so someone flipped a switch or something, and it just killed the lights and the projector. And so they had to like restart
it. Oh no!
And we had to sit through the Venom trailer again, but this time without sound. And it's just, oh my god! But watching it the second time without sound, like this could be a Ghost Rider trailer, and no one would really know.
Yeah, the thing that you said somewhere, maybe it was to me, maybe it was somewhere online, but that it could just be a generic, supernatural thriller, which I would say I don't think is a terrible direction that you can go with like a Venom movie. If you're going to do a Venom movie, I have reservations about doing a Venom movie to begin with. There's nothing in this trailer that leans into that. It's just Tom Hardy running around. There's like a shot of like the goo. Yeah,
there's a shot of the goo, and then you see like a little bit of like a tendril or something.
Oh yeah, like right at the end. Yeah.
But again, that could be anything.
Yeah, there's nothing in this trailer, and it's a teaser trailer, so maybe we'll get more. That's whatever. But
that fanboy response has been irritating the hell out of me.
Oh, I know.
I understand it's a teaser trailer, but you need to tease what the movie is.
Yeah, it doesn't say.
You can't just put random action sequences in there. Like, even if it's just you see the giant black form of Venom just like turning, but you see like the white silhouette of the Venom symbol. That's all you need. You don't need to see the face. You don't need to see the teeth. You don't need to see the tongue. You don't need the drool or whatever else is going to be in there, because I'm sure they're going to just go balls to the wall with the Seth MacFarlane design.
Todd McFarlane?
Todd McFarlane, yeah. I get those two mixed up all the time.
They're both bad. Well, Todd McFarlane is a great artist, but I think he's kind of a crappy dude.
I love Seth MacFarlane. Like, I don't care for Family Guy anymore, but I think he's a great person. I like him a lot. And then I do really enjoy The Orville.
I haven't seen it.
I recommend it. It's really good, like old school Star Trek.
That's what I heard. It's seemed like super, we're doing goofy Star Trek. And then apparently they just started doing actual Star Trek. Yeah. Which is like, all right.
And then they just have like a little bit of like some inappropriate humor now and then, but it's great. I enjoy it a lot. And there's some like really good stuff. Like there's an episode where an all-male race of aliens has a child, but the child is born female.
Interesting.
And so the way their society works is they immediately have to do a sex change operation on the child.
All right.
And so now it becomes this whole like, what's the moral thing to do?
Right, all right. Yeah, Star Trek, like we can't interfere, but also like, is it proper for them to do this? Is it right for them to do this?
And the really funny thing is like all the human crew are like, you can't change the sex of the baby. That's wrong. You need to let them grow up and make this decision themselves. And the way they turn their crew member to think the way they do is they show him Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
All right.
Like if Rudolph had a change of who he was, he wouldn't
change
be able to
operation.
help.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to help on Christmas. And so he's like, we need to let this baby grow up. And then it's a whole thing. But it's a really good and very poignant episode.
Do you think it says something about this trailer that we just went off in this tangent just because I
there's more
corrected you in the
important
artist?
things to talk about. But yeah, the Venom trailers, it's nothing. It's a teaser trailer that teases nothing.
Yeah.
It could have been Mission Impossible.
It doesn't tell you really anything about what it's about, what they're kind of... I guess if you really squint, if you know the character, you could see you could maybe see where they might be drawing on various inspirations for the character. Like, he's in a hospital wing. There was a bit of time where Eddie Brock had cancer in the comics. Maybe that has something to do with it. He seems to be involved in some kind of government agency. For a long time, Venom was like a secret agent. Like, you could maybe see that stuff, but there's not much there. You're really reaching for any conclusions you might draw about what actually this movie is about.
Yeah, and the important thing to note with this trailer as well is they wrapped filming 3 days before the trailer dropped.
Yeah.
So obviously there's some post-production stuff that's not in there, but I've been saying this on this podcast since we started talking about the Venom movie. This movie has a production timeline of less than a year. The script, I believe, was written in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, and that could be that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Like, I think
with a movie that's as heavy on post-production stuff and CGI,
maybe, yeah.
I think that's a big problem.
But like the first Iron Man started filming without a script, right? So like magic can happen. I don't think it's going to happen here, but like it's not out of the realm of possibility that something that seems as rushed could be great, but nothing I've seen so far, it makes me think it's going to be.
Yeah, for every Iron Man, there's half a dozen Twilights.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And maybe part of that is that, you know, I don't hate Venom. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, but Venom is not my favorite character, and like there's a weird fixation for some Spider-Man fans to be like of a certain age to be super into Venom, and that's just not... He's not the first character that I'd make a movie about if I had my druthers, you know what I mean? So maybe it's some of that. I don't know. I don't have high hopes for this whatsoever.
And there is some speculation that Marvel might have a secret hand in this, but I don't think Kevin Feige would touch this movie with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, I've read that like Sony is like, oh yeah, this is the same universe as Spider-Man Homecoming, and Marvel, who owns the universe that Spider-Man Homecoming is in, is like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, when they were doing the Spider-Man Homecoming press tour, Amy Pascal kept saying, "Oh yeah, it's Homecoming universe adjacent."
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense.
That means nothing. And Kevin Feige just kind of kept looking over her like, "Shut up."
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to do what you can to get the butts in the seats, right? Like, you know, if people think it's somewhat related to Avengers, somebody will go see it because, hey, what if that guy shows up in Avengers 5 or something?
I have no high hopes for this movie.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go see it and hate watch it probably, or just get a good laugh out of it with how bad it's gonna do. It's coming out this October allegedly.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe it's all just some scam to make some money off of
Disney.
I don't know, like Disney, or like tax benefits from filming. Like they filmed enough for a trailer.
They're pulling at producers. They're
exactly.
trying to make bombs so bad that they make money. So moving on to another movie that may or may not bomb, the Solo trailer. We finally got that. It was teased during the Super Bowl, and then we got the full trailer the next day. Some very interesting things. Very good production values. They clearly put some effort into this.
It's
trailer
a very
really
strong. If that's reflected in the movie, it's going to be a good-looking movie, and that is not nothing. I'm sort of in the same boat as I went with Venom. Like I'm a young-ish Star Wars fan. I love Han Solo. He's not the first character I'd make a movie about if I was going to make a spin-off movie. But it looks really good. Like Donald Glover as Lando is like,
that's ideal casting.
Okay, come on, like that, you did it.
Yeah. And there's some really interesting things, like throughout a good portion of the trailer, you see Lando is actually flying the Falcon. Yeah. So maybe throughout the first half of the movie, Lando is still in possession of the Falcon, and then somewhere Han wins it. If you look at the posters, the Falcon does look a little bit different. But if you remember, the Falcon is a freighter ship, and so that piece that's on the front is actually like a cargo hold,
Oh, yeah.
and that can be dislodged. So
Oh, interesting. I didn't make a note of that.
Speculation is that by the end of the movie, he's going to pop that out and you get the classic looking Falcon.
Yeah.
Because he's going to dump whatever drugs he's smuggling for Jabba, and that's where he's going to get the bounty on him.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that I think doesn't make me not want to see a Han Solo movie, but makes me nervous to see a Han Solo movie, because we're going to get literally everything that he has said. Like, I did this once. It's all going to be in this movie.
Made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Won the Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying this is the plot hole trilogy, the Star Wars stories, anthologies, or whatever you want to call them. Because Rogue One's entire purpose was, this is why there's a death port in the Death Star.
Right.
And now this one's going to be, how does someone make a Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs? And then if the next one is Obi-Wan, it's going to be, why does Uncle Owen hate Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a buddy cop sort of thing. Like somehow Obi-Wan's going to take Owen
they have to
on an
team up
adventure.
somehow. Yeah.
And Owen's going to be like, Luke is never doing this.
So I mean, it could very well be. Maybe it'll be great. Like, I haven't been super hyped for it, but I am interested in seeing it. I think it could very easily become like reference scene, jumps to reference scene, jumps to set piece that is a big reference, and that I think will be bad. But I guess we'll see. The trailer is good.
Yeah, and I guess the scene at the very end before you see the giant tentacles flying everywhere, where he's like, "It's fine, everything's fine." I guess that's supposed to be a callback to when they're on the prison deck trying to find Leia. And he's like, "Everything's fine, it's fine.
Yeah.
How are you?"
Right.
I didn't catch that just because it's such an innocuous thing.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Saying the words "it's fine" isn't necessarily a reference, but it's close enough that like a bunch of people are gonna latch onto that and be like.
You're making me dread seeing this movie.
Sorry.
just because I do all the advanced screenings, which is usually for like the hardcore fans.
Yeah,
but I really just want to see it at like the earliest possible moment. When I went to see Power Rangers, there was some guy sitting a few rows in front of us when Rita goes, "Make my monster grow." Like, she doesn't even say it with like the same inflection. She's in like a loud whisper, like, "Make my monster grow." And the guy goes, "Yeah." Yes, I get it. She said it in the show, dude. There's no reason to get that excited. So now
That's the one time he went to the movies this year, and he's just, it was the time of his life, and you're over here just crapping all over him. Yeah.
They said it's morphin' time. I didn't think they'd do it.
He might be a listener. He's like, I was that was me. I can't believe that. I get to go to one movie a year.
You chose wrong if you chose Power Rangers. It was fine. Power Rangers was fine. See what I did there? Han Solo, it's fine.
Oh.
I didn't even try to do that. It just happened. Or did it?
Well, it was a reference to nothing else.
So the other trailer that we had drop, not during the Super Bowl, this one actually came this past week, The Incredibles 2, which my typical co-host Alex is not a fan of this movie. He's actually or the trailer, he's very upset that they're going with Mr. Mom and Dad apparently can't take care of the kids and is having trouble being a stay-at-home dad. I didn't really get that vibe. I saw more as like supporting husband, just trying to keep up with the modern times, because as far as we're aware, Mr. Incredible was the working dad. He would 9 to 5, come home, have dinner, read the newspaper, go to bed.
Right.
So I would think that would be more insulting, is, dad has no time for the kids.
Right. Well, I could see where he would draw on that, because once it becomes clear what at least the trailer depicts the movie to be about, which seems to be Elastigirl becomes a solo superhero, so Mr. Incredible has to be the dad and take care of the family. Many of those scenes you see him looking, if not explicitly, but subtly, like very haggard, like he's got 5 o'clock shadow, he's kind of got bags under his eyes. A couple scenes in the trailer make it seem like he's like at the end of his rope with parenting. So I could see how that might be the thing that you take away from it. I hope that it will be something a little more nuanced. Yeah, less about, oh man, dads don't take care of their kids, and more like taking care of kids is exhausting.
Which it is.
Yeah. So
I mean, I have one right now, which the second one will be here any day. I mean, finding time to do anything is just almost impossible.
So hopefully it's less of a gendered thing and more of like, oh, babies are little monsters.
Which I still love the part where Jack is sitting on the couch having a great time. He gets a cookie, and then Mr. Incredible's just like, I can't keep feeding him cookies. And then he hulks out and becomes that little monster and starts beating up on him. I thought that was great because that's very literal symbolism right there.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of the first one. I haven't seen it in years. The first one was great, and hopefully, even though it's always a little weird when
it's been about 15 years.
Yeah, when
20.
I'm always a little skittish when something comes back after so long, which we see more and more these days. But I'm hoping. I think it's all the same team, right? It's Brad
Bird's back. So obviously they've got better computer animation,
right.
But they're still doing a really good job of keeping it in the same art style.
It looked very similar.
The lighting engines and stuff just look a little bit better, but everything else looks great.
So hopefully it retains the same sort of the sense of, the same style as the first one. And I think if it does, it will be mostly successful.
Yeah, I think they're throwing a little bit of a misdirect because you've got Bob Odenkirk's character who seems to be financing Mrs. Incredible or Elastigirl's rise back into popularity as like the face of the new supers. Obviously, he's supposed to be making people think he's like Syndrome. He's going to be the guy who is financing this stuff but setting up their downfall.
Sure.
I think he might be a guy who actually wants to do this, but he might have a financier or someone else
sure
behind the curtains, behind him, who is pulling his strings unknowingly. So I don't know exactly, but the only thing that really disappointed me about this trailer is that it did confirm that it seems to have confirmed that we are not getting a time jump.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were trying to give us a little bit of a misdirect here as well, because Brad Bird kept saying we're going to pick up right at the Underminer fight at the end of the first one. So I thought they were going to do Underminer, opening credits, 15 years later.
Sure.
Well, I'm a little disappointed in that. As long as the story is good, I don't care.
Yeah, right.
I'm not like these Star Wars people that got really invested in a theory, and now the movie's going to suck because it didn't do my theory.
Well, and the thing about that bit, too, is with the way that movie ends, with the Underminer showing up and, they suit up, you don't necessarily need to see what happens next. Like, you have an idea what happens next. You could just as easily jump the movie 10, 20, 30 years later. It doesn't matter how that scene plays out.
They're going to win.
Yeah, unless, maybe they'll do something interesting with it, but that is like probably not the most interesting thing they can do in that movie. So I could see that, some trepidation there would be. I
think it's going to be a big action sequence to open it, so they can be a little more plateaued for a while. So
which is kind of how the first one was, too.
Mm-hmm. So, Incredibles 2 comes out this June, I believe June 15th, which...
that sounds right.
Deadpool was actually, I believe, supposed to come out the week before or the week after, but because that got bumped up to May 21st, I believe. Mm-hmm. Incredibles is going to have a good window between that and Ant-Man and the Wasp to make some good money. Yeah. I think Jurassic World comes out the week after that, but I don't think Jurassic World's going to be able to have the success that the first Jurassic World had.
No. Yeah, I think a huge part of the Jurassic World's success was just the nostalgia factor. Jurassic World was okay, but I think
they did debut a new trailer during the Super Bowl that I don't have on my notes that I do want to talk about a little quick.
Oh, yeah.
If they play up that intense, like almost scary vibe with that like mini Indominus Rex or whatever that thing is, I think it could be really interesting, but I don't know how much rewatch value it would have. Right. Because if it's too scary, parents are going to take their kids to go see it again.
Yeah.
So they've got to toe that line, but it's really interesting that apparently they have a mini Indominus or something.
Well, that was an interesting thing in that trailer where I saw the first trailer, and that's the one that they've been showing in theaters, and it's all right. I mean, it's whatever. You got Jeff Goldblum back, and that's cute, whatever. But
and he says life finds a way.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
But it's now that second trailer, it seems like maybe that's just like maybe that's the first act, maybe that's the first half of the movie. They go to the island and they bring some back, and then it's like a King Kong situation or something where, like, I guess sort of like Jurassic Park 2.
But maybe done a little more intense and not as goofy.
Yeah, where like then there's like dinosaurs in the world, and there's like a super cool tiny new one that they have to deal with or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like it's just some kind of mini Indominus. I know they allude to it being another hybrid of some kind. Yeah. But it looks like it's an Indominus. They just like compacted it.
Yeah.
Because it can fit in a room. without apparently breaking through anything. So,
So that's interesting because you that first trailer makes it seem like this movie they're going back and they're going to have an adventure.
Process.
Yeah, but it seems like that might be just a part of the movie, which would be interesting to see what happens after that.
Yeah, and they have that subplot with Chris Pratt trying to rescue Blue as well.
That seems that line makes me laugh for literally every time. Like, he's still alive. Like, all right, it's a dinosaur. Like, I don't know.
We see that he has raised Blue from birth.
I don't know.
Didn't you see how tiny and cute that weird little CGI raptor was?
It just makes me laugh every time when she's like, Blue, this character that everyone's very invested in, is still alive. Let's go get him. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess if it was like your dog or something, maybe I could see like, oh, you have an attachment, but
it's a raptor.
Yeah.
Its loyalties are, can I eat you?
Yeah, and also like, I don't know, when the first time they said that, the first time I watched that trailer, I was like, who are you talking about?
And honestly, when they show Tiny Blue in the trailer, I did not realize in the first movie that Blue has like an actual blue stripe.
Yeah.
And then I looked for it when they showed Big Blue, and like, yeah, you can see it. And I thought it was like Alpha, Beta, and like Blue was just some kind of nickname for Beta.
Yeah.
But no, apparently the name is Blue.
It just seems very funny to me that she convinced him to go back because, oh, your pet's still there. He might not eat you alive.
Yeah.
She?
I think it's a she.
She, yeah.
Technically, they're all supposed to be she's.
Right, that's right.
Which, I mean, they could have made them all boys, too.
Yeah.
But whatever.
When are the boy dinosaurs going to get there, too, is what I want to know.
It's called history for a reason.
Prehistoric creatures.
So, speaking of representation, let's get into our main discussion here. Black Panther. So, we are going to do a really brief, non-spoiler discussion, which is basically going to be, this movie's awesome, I assume, from both of us. And then we're going to get into spoilers, and I'll timestamp that as well. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can just get our initial reactions and move on with your life. Matt, tell us about Black Panther. Non-spoilers.
Yeah, I guess the only way that I can start is it's very good. Just all killer cast, beautiful art direction, all I can think of right now is just generic. So let me toss it back to you, and maybe I can bounce off something you have to say.
Yeah, like you said, the art direction is amazing. The colors pop. I read one review that said this is a love letter to African culture, which it completely is.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
They do a great job with the source material. They also do a really good job of steering away from some of the more racially insensitive stuff, like M'Baku, the man ape.
Yeah, they reference him a little bit, but like
they call him a gorilla instead. Yeah, this is not spoilers,
like, by the way. Either way, like the comparison to like a big tough black guy to like any kind of primate is like a little sketchy. So like you have to kind of tread carefully, and they thread that needle pretty well.
Yeah, because they use it as a term of endearment. They call him the Great Gorilla because he's the leader of this tribe.
Yeah, and I think they only reference him as that just the one time.
Yeah,
but it's sort of like he's whatever T'Challa's tribe is the panther. They're the gorilla.
Yeah, and then everyone has like their own representative animal. The performances are great. The set pieces are great. The direction is great. It's fantastic. The actual story is relatively above average. Like, I don't think it's treading new ground, but because of the way they go about it, it is. And this is not just like some generic superhero movie. It's a superhero movie that has something to say. Yeah. And what they say is amazing. Yeah, and it's super important.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, just I guess the thing that struck me, and I've seen it a couple times now, was I sort of had a vision in my head of like what I imagined Wakanda, like not the country, like the city or whatever they call it,
the capital city.
In the comics, they call it like the Golden City or whatever, but they don't really name it here. But you know what you think of when you think of this big futuristic city, and like the city in the movie is not that, but it is very much like what would it look like if there was a country in Africa that was free of colonialism and allowed to sort of grow in its own direction, unfettered from other influences. And in that way, it still looks like a great futuristic city. Excuse me. It's just not what I was imagining in my mind. Mm-hmm. So it's like this great little, even down to the costuming, like everything is like, what if, X from, like ancient African tribes, but today allowed to, sort of evolve in a way that was unfettered, which is, that's why the term Afrofuturism exists, but it's very much a strong piece of that kind of sort of speculative fiction, science fiction.
Yeah, and they did a great job with that. Excuse me. I believe Ryan Meinerding had some input on how it is. He's the head of concepts for Marvel. He's the guy who designed the Black Panther costume, the Captain America costumes, the Iron Man costume. Yeah, he does amazing artwork too. If you haven't seen his work, like look him up. He's amazing. But yeah, the design that he and Ryan Coogler and everyone involved came up with for Wakanda is awesome. So we can get into more in-depth discussion. I think we're going to end the non-spoilers here. Again, I'll put a timestamp. If you don't want to listen to the spoilers, thanks for listening this week. Don't forget to email, Facebook us, YouTube us, whatever, Twitter at us. If you do want to get Matt's Twitter stuff, we'll do that at the end. So again, we can do a timestamp. Moving into spoilers. I don't even know where to begin with this movie. So it takes place immediately, like a week after the events of Civil War, from what I understand.
Which was sort of a surprise to me. Not a huge surprise, just because it seems to be that generally, at least in terms of like what little cues and clues there are, all the movies sort of take place roughly
a year or so
in the distance, the same kind of distance from when they were released. Yeah. So like Avengers 2 is like 2 or 3 years after Avengers. Unless there's some other specificity like there is here, this movie takes place however many months it was between the release of that movie and the release of this movie.
Yeah. And I should mention that there is actually a prologue first. We get to see King T'Chaka back in the 1990s, I believe.
Yeah, 92.
Meet up with his brother, Prince
I can't remember his name.
Or something
yeah,
like that.
That sounds right.
Played by the wonderful Sterling K. Brown. If you don't watch This Is Us, you need to watch it just for him.
He was on Grey's Anatomy for a while too, I think.
Was he?
I think so.
Oh.
Or maybe not. Maybe that's another guy.
He's done some other things.
That's another guy. Sorry. Cut this out.
Nope, staying in. I'm the editor. I make these decisions. But he's fantastic in This Is Us. It's a great cast all around, but he's winning all sorts of awards. There's a really great tweet out there when he won his SAG award. Someone tweeted out, Sterling K. Brown's winning so many awards, Chadwick Boseman's going to have to play him in a movie. Which, I mean, it's true. He's such a good emotional actor.
Yeah.
And in this opening prologue where he's a Wakandan who has been sent on this spy mission to kind of see what the world is doing. And he gets sucked into kind of like the turf wars in California. And he thinks that Wakanda's intervention would help the plight of the black man in the United States and across the world. But T'Chaka does not believe in this because Wakanda has never interfered with the outside world. They've remained inward because that's what allowed them to flourish. This whole story kind of becomes the sins of the father come to impact the next generation, essentially. The Michael B. Jordan's character is the son of Sterling K. Brown's character. Michael B. Jordan is an amazing villain in this movie too.
He is probably one of the best that the cinematic universe has had, which still is not terribly high bar. That's always been.
If you can get up there with Loki, though, that's saying something, even with the low bar that Marvel has.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting character just because, like, and the same thing was true of Spider-Man: Homecoming with the Vulture, where he's right, like the things that are motivating him, like the ideology that is like pushing him to do what he's doing is like.
He's not wrong.
He's basically right because his whole thing is, and Wakanda is this crazy powerful, like very rich country in Africa, which has also done nothing to help any number of injustices put upon Africans, black people, whatever throughout all of history.
Yeah, they've turned a blind eye to pretty much everything: apartheid, slavery, all of that.
And they call out police brutality, drugs, things like that. Like, it's interesting because the primary love interest in the movie, Nakia, is saying the same thing. She's just not advocating starting an empire over it. She's saying we can help, and he's like, and Killmonger is saying the same thing,
just in a different way.
Her end game is like we should
help.
We should help people. We should share our resources and information. And he's like, oh, we should overthrow governments and like kill people.
Yeah. And but yeah, he's a super fleshed out villain. I don't think he has more than maybe 20 minutes of screen time. I think the only thing I really did not like about Michael B. Jordan's character, I feel weird calling him Killmonger. Like, well,
it's weird because like at first they bring it up when they
say it's his nickname because his name is Eric Stevens.
Yeah, and then they call him Killmonger because he kills so many people. But then from then everyone just calls him Killmonger, and in the credits he's called Eric Killmonger, which is just very. It just seems like it seems like that's a cute reference to the character he's based on. But then after that, everyone's like, "What's up, Killmonger? What are you doing?" Yeah,
and it feels really weird because again, like you're saying, he is relatively justified in what he wants to do. Yeah. It's just what he wants to do is genocide.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that's so interesting. He is at once also this like victim of, but also product of like American imperialism and colonialism. Like they call it out specifically where he like. Because in the backstory of the character, he goes into the CIA, becomes like not the CIA. He goes into like special
Secret
forces.
Service. Yeah, he's like an MIT graduate. He's like really
he's like
smart.
a super crazy badass like soldier guy,
and he's trained to infiltrate and destroy governments.
Yeah, which is like something that the United States has done in history, like actual history. So like there's like this interesting little like nugget of he also is like a product of some of the worst stuff that this country does. It doesn't quite get to like a condemnation, maybe it should, but it is like also that's just an interesting nugget that's there as well, where the world that he was like steeped in, that he was abandoned in and like forced to survive in, also is informing this sort of like genocidal tendency. So like it's just so interesting like how much he's a villain, so he's the bad guy, but also he's very much like a victim who has some strong, largely correct ideology behind him.
Yeah, and we didn't mention this. So Michael B. Jordan's character, Eric Killmonger Stevens, is the son of Sterling K. Brown's character, who is the Prince of Wakanda behind King T'Chaka. And T'Chaka kills Sterling K. Brown's character because of his ideals.
Yeah, the whole backstory is like he betrayed. He sees the injustice, the police brutality, the drugs, the gangs, all this stuff, and is upset and decides he's going to help get some vibranium, the all-powerful thing from Wakanda, out to people, and then, to help them, to arm them against oppression. And yeah.
T'Chaka had sent his own spy to spy on Sterling K. Brown, which I think his name was like M'Boku.
No, M'Boku was the...
he's the guy with the disc.
M'Boku I thought was the Jabrani guy, the gorilla. Right?
M'Baku, yes, you're right.
I believe he's Zuri. Zuri, I think.
I don't know. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up or something.
Two very white men trying to remember a number of
very African names. But anyway, so T'Chaka has his spy, which ends up being Forrest Whitaker's younger self, and Sterling K. Brown goes to kill him, but T'Chaka stops and murders Sterling K. Brown before he can fire his gun, and that basically orphans Michael B. Jordan, and they choose to leave him there. Yeah. So that's where the sins of the father come in. Is instead of taking Michael B. Jordan home and to give his father a proper burial and to raise him in the Wakandan surroundings, they just left him there to kind of fend for himself, and that's where he has this vendetta against Wakanda.
Yeah. So I'll wrap up in him is like so much stuff about isolationism, imperialism, colonialism. Like basically nobody that could claim Killmonger is correct. Like he's a Wakandan by birth. they're awful in the way, you know, they abandon this kid after they murder his father. He's American by where he lives. He also is a product of the worst of what we do. He's just like so failed in every way, and it like makes perfect sense that he becomes this like this monster that like is set on, you know, overthrowing a government so he can overthrow all the governments.
So Sterling K. Brown's character was Njobu. Zuri was Forrest Whitaker's character.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the first time I saw it, I was very surprised. Like, oh, Forrest Whitaker, he was there. Because when they reveal it halfway through the movie that was his character. But, like, they call him Zuri. Like, he's like, hey, what's up, Zuri? Like, in the first scene. So it's like, oh, and then, I should have noticed that.
They did some amazing casting, too, because the kid they cast, whose last name is Whitaker as well, but no relation to Forrest, he's got the kind of lazy eye thing going on, too. And so, like, they give you a lot of visual and audible clues, but you're just so drawn into the tension between the brothers that you don't even think about it. So that's kind of the setup for where we're going. Again, the movie takes place like a week after they're getting ready to crown T'Challa king. So the movie opens with that action sequence where we see him falling from the Panther jet or whatever you want to call it. And he ends up saving Lupita Nyong'o's character, Nakia. And that's the love interest. And he's like, I want you to be there when I become king. They have this amazing ceremony where tribes are able to challenge for the throne if they want to, which that scene is amazing when T'Challa shows up and you just see all this color and the sunset, and it's fantastic. Yeah,
just beautiful costuming. Everything about that sequence is like, it's so good. Like another director, like someone who is not a black director would have like screwed it up big time. But someone who like someone like Ryan Coogler, who like I'm sure feels very deep appreciation for that kind of like history and culture, and you know I'm sure a lot of people involved doing their research, because you know it's not like he's making all the costumes, but does it very well. Like I said before, it feels less like, oh, this is just a bunch of like African stereotypes, and more like this is what that culture looks like if it's allowed to evolve.
Yeah, and what makes it great is you get to have so many different styles in that moment because you have all the different tribes. Yeah. So you have one tribe that is leaning more towards the dresses and the like almost Roman kind of design where like even the men are wearing them. And then you have others that are like almost more business-like. You've got the guy with the disc in his mouth who's wearing like a 3-button suit.
Yeah, which is he's a breakout character of the year as far as I'm concerned.
That moment was really cool because that's when we also first get to meet M'Baku, the leader of the gorilla tribe or whatever you want to call them. I forget what they call them.
I think they are called the Jabrani. That sounds right.
That sounds right.
Again, apologies.
They don't call them the gorilla tribe because obviously that's a little insensitive if you take it at face value. So they probably went with a more African,
which I think that is also from some of the comics too. I think they reference that as that tribe by name. So I think there might be a pull there too.
Yeah, you're more versed in the Black Panther comics than I am, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you on for this episode.
Yeah, and I might be wrong about that, but there's only a couple of the more known runs of Black Panther that I've read, and I feel like that is from there.
Yeah, but the story beats actually are pretty close to the Black Panther storyline from Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, where although in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, T'Chaka loses the crown and M'Baku takes over, where in this case, T'Challa is king for like a week.
Yeah.
And then Killmonger comes in, takes the crown, and then Killmonger is in power for like 2 or 3 days, and then T'Challa completes his coup.
Which I think might be, I believe that might be drawing, and I'm sure it's probably happened more than once in the books, because nothing is new in comics, but I might be very wrong about this, so forgive me if I am, but I think that comes from the Christopher Priest run on Black Panther, which is like one of the big ones besides that everyone knows. I think there's a period there where I want to say it's Killmonger. It might actually be M'Baku instead who takes over. So there is a lot of stuff in this movie that kind of like all the Marvel movies isn't like a direct adaptation, but draws inspiration from various source
Yeah.
materials.
Well, I know Earth's Mightiest Heroes was relatively accurate to the comics, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was M'Baku. We're also introduced to W'Kabi, who is played by what's his name from?
Oh, I can't remember. From
Daniel
Get Out.
Kaluuya from Get Out.
Yeah.
I will get into this a little bit more, but W'Kabi is a very well done character, but he has some moments that I don't really care for, just because I feel like it's a little rushed and pushed.
Some of his motivations are more informed than they are depicted.
Yeah. So what really kicks the story off is they get a hit that Andy Serkis, Ulysses Claw character, is out and about selling vibranium to people. T'Challa goes on this mission to capture him. The reason he's such of high interest is, if you remember in Avengers Infinity War, he has a giant surplus of vibranium that I guess he stole with N'Jobu.
Yeah, I think the implication is that I guess Age of Ultron didn't give me that impression that it was he'd just been sitting on it for forever, but I guess according to this,
he must have been.
He must have been.
He was unloading little bits at a time.
Yeah.
So Andy Serkis and his character Ulysses Claw stole a bunch of vibranium sometime in the 90s, and he's just been kind of sitting on this, slowly distributing it, and he's going to sell it in somewhere in North or South Korea. I think it was South Korea.
Well, the one that they're selling, it's South Korea, I think. The one that they're selling, I believe, in the movie itself is the bit that we're introduced to Michael B. Jordan's character when he...
Oh, yeah, he steals the axe.
He steals an axe that has a vibranium... head blade, whatever.
Yeah.
From a museum, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're selling that one specifically.
Yeah,
I think the idea is that they're
right.
trying to draw out Wakanda or the Black Panther or something, because they say the whole plot with
Everett Ross and
like Killmonger's Killmonger and Claw's whole deal is they're doing this job and they're going to split the profits. So I think we don't ever actually see it, but I think it's supposed to be the head of that axe.
Yeah, I'm like 99.9% sure you're right. So T'Challa, Nakia, Lupita Nyong'o, and Okoye. I forget the actress.
It's I
have the IMDb page.
She's on The Walking Dead, and I knew it literally 10 minutes before walking in the door here.
Danny Gurira.
Yeah.
Gurira.
She's Michonne on The Walking Dead, which
okay.
I actually didn't recognize her until.
Well, yeah, she doesn't have 6 foot long dreads.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was that or if she just was doing such a different character that it wasn't until I recognized her name in the credits that I was like, oh, that's who that was. All right.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. I don't watch The Walking Dead anymore, but Michonne's always she's been a fantastic character in the comics.
Yeah,
forever.
and she's very good on the show. She's one of the few things about that show, and I haven't watched it in a couple seasons either, but she's one of the few things in that show that is pretty solid.
Good. Danny Gurira, she plays Okoye, who is the head of the Dora Milaje, and Wakanda is going on this secret mission to try and bring in Claw to pay for his crimes for killing W'Kabi's father and stealing all that vibranium.
Well, yeah, and I think it's that, and I think part of it, I think they mention it because I think where all that vibranium goes in Age of Ultron is Ultron takes it, right?
Yeah.
And then like everything that he's able to do because of the vibranium. So like, I guess in theory they're also going after him as an accessory to blowing up the flying city or whatever.
Yeah, Sokovia. They're going after this, and the plan gets complicated because they run into Everett Ross, who you will remember from Civil War. He's played by Bilbo Baggins. And so the plan gets a little more complicated because Everett Ross is trying to make this buy for vibranium for the U.S. government while also implicating Claw. T'Challa says, you can do the buy, but as soon as Claw is able to be got, I'm getting him.
Yeah.
And so this whole team up, but not really kind of thing happens. And a shootout ends up happening. Claw gets captured, and then he gets rescued by Killmonger. Mm-hmm. And this is where I have my problem with W'Kabi, because what happens is Michael B. Jordan's character ends up killing Claw and taking him to Wakanda as kind of like a chip to get him in.
Yeah.
And W'Kabi, who again has a vendetta against Claw, had previously thrown some shade at T'Challa for not bringing in Claw.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to understand that he says as much in one scene that so basically the idea is that when they did their big heist, there was an explosion. He blew up something at the border, and a bunch of people were killed, including apparently W'Kabi's parents. So his whole thing is he says to T'Challa is like, get this guy or like kill him, and he's like, I promise I will. And then he gets away. So when he comes back, W'Kabi's like, what's up? Where is he? I want
to kill him, or I want to see his dead body.
Yeah. So then he's like, whoops, he got away. So then you get the idea that I think the idea is supposed to be that he's pissed because his friend promised him and he didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And Michael B. Jordan shows up with this body and
he's like, well, he gets shit done.
A duffel bag, and he's also got a claim to the throne. He's like, all right, the last king didn't do anything forever, and this king is not shaping up to be much better, so let's go with the new guy.
But see, I feel like the moment that W'Kabi has with T'Challa is it doesn't play right only because he says your father did nothing and you're no better.
Yeah.
It's something to that effect. And it's like he literally went out to go do it. And T'Challa could have told him the whole thing saying, hey, we had him.
Yeah.
We were getting ready to bring him. And then someone broke him out. Like he didn't slip through our fingers. We had him.
Yeah.
And someone like blew up a wall.
Yeah. Well, their whole thing, I think, is it's a little informed, like I said, because I think we're supposed to get the idea that they're like old friends, like best friends, and that this is sort of like a crumbling of their relationship, but it's not. It's mostly told as opposed to shown. We get like a scene of them kind of hanging out. We get, but then everything else is mostly told to us rather than shown to us.
Yeah, but again, I think T'Challa doesn't have to go into the whole detail, but if because W'Kabi said that line, like your dad did nothing and now you're doing nothing, that line bothered me because he literally went on a covert ops mission to try and get him. So that part bugged me. If it had just been like he got, like you just saw the look on his face change, I think that would have been more powerful than calling him out for saying he's doing nothing.
Sure. And I think it's a problem that extends throughout the whole movie with that character, just because like I'm sure we'll get there, it sounds like, but there are points at which he is doing stuff and you're like, why are you doing this right now? And like his sort of at the end when he has like the choice to make and he's like, this is the choice I'm making. And you're like, wait, but everything that we know now, why are you doing that? Like I can see how you would have gotten to this point, but at this juncture, why are you taking this path instead of that path?
Yeah. And that's, again, I think that's probably the biggest weak link in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's not that weak of a link. It doesn't break the chain.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's God, I can't remember the guy's name now again. It's another great performance, and like he was like the one guy that because there was so much hay made about this cast in the lead up that literally I was like, okay, everyone in this movie is great, and every actor in this movie is excellent. And he was like the one guy that I did not know was in this movie. He's also excellent. Get Out was like one of the best movies of last year. But I was like, oh, that guy, he's great.
Yeah. Daniel Kaluuya.
Yes, thank you.
So one person we're completely spacing over right now is Shuri.
Oh, yes.
We need to talk about Shuri.
Yeah.
This is someone that every girl can look up to. It's not just black girls, although black girls definitely should look up to her. She is a fantastic, fun, adorable, awesome, badass character. Like
she's great. She's the breakout character of the movie, I think.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And I mean, I say adorable in like the best way possible. I don't mean in any demeaning way. But like the rapport that she and Chadwick Boseman have together is awesome. She also has really great moments with Okoye and Nakia. And then, I mean, we can't forget about Angela Bassett as T'Challa's mom. Ramonda was her name. I mean, there's so many great performances. I think the weakest performance for me was Andy Serkis's Claw.
Yeah.
His performance was really weird and off kilter, which I think was intentional.
Yeah, he's like just like a weird over-the-top dude, which follows from Avengers, but from Age of Ultron and the brief bit we got of him.
He was weird, but he wasn't like bouncing off the walls, like high on laughing gas kind of weird.
Yeah. It is a bit of a weird performance, and I feel like that's maybe not mostly, but at least partially an inherited concern, because it's like, okay, well, Claw is traditionally a very like central Black Panther villain, but also he was a character that was like in a previous movie specifically designed to set up this movie.
Yeah.
So, I feel like given how they work him in, they do pretty well, but he does feel like he's a little bit of a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's there to basically close out the first act.
Yeah.
And then what happens between him and Killmonger at the South Korean little airport is everything that sets up the end of the movie. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Shuri though.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
There's a bit in the comic, the Prelude comic, where she has already cured Bucky, and she basically just calls out Tony Stark for not being as smart as she is, which is fantastic. But yeah, she creates the new Black Panther suit, which, seeing it in the trailers, I wasn't a big fan of. I thought it was maybe too lean in the mask.
Okay.
But as I watched the movie and I saw everything evolve, I don't know if they really changed the Black Panther suit, but it seems really bulky on Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
The original suit that we saw in Civil War.
Yes, I rewatched that movie before I saw Black Panther, and I got the same impression. And visually, I don't think it's that different because you can only do so much when it's a solid black suit. But it does seem like it fits him a little better, and if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it doesn't have that bulkiness.
I think the almost latex onesie, it looks better because it shows off the form a little bit more, but also because they're able to implement the kinetic energy that it absorbs. It adds color to it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Shuri designs these new costumes. She has 2 new suits for him. She has this great line about how just because something works doesn't mean you can't make it better.
Which it was only on the second viewing that I realized that is a thesis for the movie.
Yes.
Because so much of the whole thing is Wakanda is chugging along just fine, pretty much. But obviously, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot more that they could be doing too, improve the world. And that struck me when I caught my second viewing, and I was trying to be a little more eagle-eyed because I knew I was going to be sitting here, and I was like, oh, that's that's a weighted line. That isn't just a throwaway thing. Yeah,
and again, Shuri she stole every scene she was in.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She develops all the technology that the Black Panthers and the Dora Milaje use. I think she's only supposed to be 19 in the movie, or maybe
she's
even younger.
She's late, an old teenager. And I want to say was it Letitia Wright? Is that who the actress is?
You are correct.
Yes. And I looked her up after the movie, and she hasn't been in a ton of nothing that anybody would really know.
She's in Black Mirror, but that's
probably
she's
an episode of Black Mirror. But she's on fire the whole movie. She's this
she's a spark.
Yeah, she's this quirky, fun. She's very obviously a very intelligent character, but she's also having a ton of fun doing what she's doing. She's very excited and energetic about, I'm just gonna build weird shoes that don't make any sound and stuff like that.
She has this great moment in T'Challa's coronation where they ask if anyone is willing to challenge for the throne, and she raises her hand. Yeah. And everyone's just like, what?
Yeah.
And then she just goes, can we get this over with, please? This corset's really tight.
I'm bored, yeah. And it's interesting just because Chadwick Boseman is great. He's a great actor. I want to see him in a ton of Black Panther movies, but I already want to see them do the story where she's the queen and she's the Black Panther.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope that's where they're going with it. If Chadwick Boseman's only on for 5 or 6 movies, I mean, she could easily take over. Obviously she's not bulky enough, but I guess that's one plot hole that they have. One of the things we can get into now, since again we're in spoilers and we're kind of going all over the place, just talking about whatever. The reviews we've done for this have never been very organized, so I apologize for anyone having issues following this.
You should watch the movie and not let us tell you it.
I feel like if we're more helter-skelter, it helps people who haven't seen the movie that are still listening to this. They still get to go in pretty fresh. Because they mentioned this, but there it is. Okay.
Right.
So, I don't mind being a little helter-skelter, but at the same time, anyone looking for structure is probably going a little crazy. Now I forgot where I was going. What did I say?
You mentioned the bulkiness of the...
So one of the things Michael B. Jordan's character does is he gets rid of the herb that gives the Black Panther his enhanced strength.
Sure.
So if Shuri was ever to take over as the Black Panther, as far as we know right now, she would not be able to take that herb to get that enhanced strength.
Yeah.
So that creates a small problem because you could easily just say, oh, she's tiny, but she took the herb and now she has superhuman strength and endurance.
Well, I was honestly a little bit surprised, not surprised, I guess, like pleased, because like a lot of the Black Panther stuff is sort of mystic in the sense that like because there's a bit in the beginning where I think it's implied to be Sterling Brown talking to his son when they're sort of setting up Wakanda and like, here's the exposition you need. I'm telling him it has a story.
Oh yeah, and the sand, hollow sand or whatever.
And they
which
do
the hollow sand was super cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And they do the bit where like, oh, the first Black Panther, he communed with the Panther God, which like in the context of the movie is sort of like, oh, he's telling these are the legends of the people. But like in the context of like the Black Panther comic books, that's a real ass god. Like that's a real Panther god. So I was a little surprised that they did that, because in Civil War I was just like, oh, it's probably just like he's just got a super suit or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so I was a little bit surprised that they were like, okay, we're going all in on this stuff.
This is the Wakandan super soldier serum.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess all that is to say that I could see them if they ever got that far, if they didn't just say, oh, there was a crop somewhere else that we had, that they could just say, oh, well, her suit is like a little better Iron Man suit. It gives her strength, it gives her speed, it gives her everything she needs.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, you could easily just say, yeah, it's Wakandan technology.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I would love to see that. The actress is young enough in it. Let's see here. I'm pulling up her IMDb page. Yeah, she's 24.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not really hitting her prime for another 6 years, which, I mean, at that point, we might already have a Black Panther sequel plus 2 more Avengers movies.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think, yeah, it's interesting because, like, that is the age that Ryan Coogler is. He's 30 or 31, maybe. So, I mean,
yeah, he's 31.
That just reminded me that it is wild that, like, this is this dude's, like, 3rd movie, and he's, like...
On Rotten Tomatoes, he's 3 for 3.
Yeah, he's just
like every
rocking
movie
it.
is like 92% or better.
Yeah, I haven't seen Fruitvale Station, which is supposed to be very good. Also starring Michael B. Jordan. But Creed I watched last year, and I'm not a big fan. I was never a big fan of the Rocky movies, but that movie
The movie's fantastic.
Yeah.
I watched it for the first time earlier this year just because I wanted to get ready for Black Panther, and I was just like, why have I not seen this sooner?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, and it's why
he gets so much good stuff out of Michael B. Jordan.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, Michael B. Jordan's always been good. Going as far back as The Wire when he was like maybe 12. He's never been better than when he's with Coogler.
I mean, he was really good in Chronicle, which is my first real exposure to him. I never bothered watching Fantastic, but Marvel continues to redeem former Human Torches.
Yeah, right. Well, honestly, like when that was the thing, I haven't watched that movie either. That was the thing that almost made me watch it, is because Michael B. Jordan is great. I want to see him be great in these movies, and this is before obviously Black Panther was a twinkle in our eye, but that was the one. He was the guy that almost got me to pay money to see that movie.
It wasn't too long after Fantastic Four reboot bombed that Marvel's like, Michael B. Jordan's going to be the bad guy in Black Panther.
Yeah.
Like it was like Fox has just said, cancel the sequel, and then Marvel literally just said, hey, come on over here.
Even though, like, I think up until even after that, Fox was like, yeah, we're gonna make a sequel. Definitely.
We'll see how Deadpool does.
Right. One of those things like they never actually cancel it; they just never get around to making it.
So, but yeah, Shuri, we got a little off track.
Yeah.
Shuri is fantastic. She steals just about every scene she's in. Angela Bassett does a good job. She does solid for what she's given. She's not given a lot to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and it's crazy just how strong this cast is, and how many of them have like 1 or 2 scenes. Like Sterling Brown is in 2 scenes, and he is giving it his all in both. Like you totally get what this dude's about in 2 short scenes, and like Forrest Whitaker and Angela Bassett are both in similar positions where they're not doing a ton in terms of like their screen time or like what they're actually asked to do, but they're doing the hell out of it.
One guy I want to talk about, if Letitia Wright isn't the breakout star, Winston Duke is. He's the guy who plays M'Baku.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His credits on IMDb, not including Black Panther, are Modern Family, Major Crimes, The Messenger, Person of Interest, and Law and Order.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
And those are all, I'm guessing, one-off
I'm pretty sure they're all
victim
just like,
or criminal of the week
Yeah.
episodes.
yeah. So this guy shows up and he plays, I don't want to say a significant role, but it's a pretty important role. And again,
Yeah,
it's a very controversial role as well, because again, he's playing the man-ape from the comics, and he has to toe that line of comic accuracy while also being respectful of within the role. And he's fantastic. I love this character.
Yeah. Well, it's another thing where, like, I think a director who maybe isn't as sensitive as those kinds of portrayals, like a white director maybe. Like, there's the scene at the very beginning when they all show up, that whole tribe, and they're like super decked out in their like war paint, and they're like doing the gorilla stuff. Another like
A Zack Snyder or Michael Bay.
Yeah, like, or really like any, like even your most thoughtful white
Steven
director
Spielberg.
who like is just not trained to think about those kinds of things, that those scenes become like flat out racist, I think. And they're really trying very hard to toe that line where, you know, yeah, this is a character who like was not created maliciously. The man-ape was not created to be like a racist caricature, but you know, the history of the way, you know, black people have been compared to primates for like savage primates for their entire existence makes it a fraught thing to interpret that character, but they're doing it because it is an important character.
And again,
Black
within
Panther.
the context of how Wakanda works with these tribes and how they have animal representation,
Yeah.
it makes sense. But again, you are running that risk of becoming racially insensitive.
Yeah, you're towing a line, and I think the script and the direction and the action kind of toes that line pretty well, which I would expect from anyone who is aware of the sort of the loaded history of that kind of portrayal.
Sticking with that coronation fight between M'Baku and T'Challa, when they whipped out those old panther and gorilla masks,
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool,
That was
because
very
I
cool.
feel like the history is immediately implied in that. Like, that's the original Black Panther mask. That's
Yeah.
the original gorilla mask that the tribe leaders wore. And they looked fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love the representation of it. I love the symbolism of it. And it was just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then M'Baku says my favorite joke in the entire movie, where they're Shuri and Angela Bassett's character, Ramonda, are running for their lives from Killmonger, and so they go to M'Baku for help, and they also have Everett Ross with him, because obviously a white man in Wakanda is probably not going to survive.
Right.
And Everett Ross keeps interjecting, like, we need your help, you got to help us. And he just goes, one more word out of you and I'm going to feed you to my children. And then you just see him take its big gulp, and M'Baku starts laughing. He's like, we're vegetarians.
That's very good. That's very good.
I love that line. That was great.
There's a bit in that first fight, though, that I think, again, on my second viewing, I noted a little more. Like, because so much, we talked a lot about where Killmonger's at in this whole thing, but, like, we haven't quite gotten yet to sort of T'Challa and his whole thing.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that a bit, where a lot of it is sins of the father, which is a big part of his story, but it's also very much about, he's trying to figure out, like, who he is, what kind of king he's going to be. He says at one point, or no, the ghost of his father, essentially, says.
Yeah, I did want to talk about Necropolis really quick before we really dive into T'Challa.
Yeah, there's a point where he basically says to him, you know, it's hard for a good man to be king. So, like, I didn't quite get it the first time around, and at first it struck me as being really out of place, but on the second time, there's this bit where, like, he's like losing the first fight, and for the kingship, and like his mom like is screaming at him, like, show him who you are. And that's for whatever reason, the second time around, that struck me as like, oh, that's another phrase that is like, seems innocuous at first, but also is like extremely loaded, because that's his story in this movie. You mentioned the fight, so
that's wonderful. I didn't even catch that. I've only seen it the once, unfortunately. Right. I would love to see it again, but again, I don't think I'm going to have time with baby number 2 coming any moment.
You can take a baby to the movies in like 3 days, right?
Yeah, something like that. You know, take it into a German festive theater. Might be licensed a seat. Some people aren't going to sit in theater seats ever again. But yeah, so the one thing I did want to talk about, which again, going back to the mysticism before we really start talking about T'Challa and the last fight of the movie, I was really surprised that they actually did Necropolis. I think it was glimpsed in the trailers, but it was like, it looks like he's just kind of walking. That'll probably get cut. But they do a really cool job with it where T'Challa, when he's being coordinated, they take him to a secret ceremony where they revitalize him with the Panther serum. Part of it is being buried and like communing with the past chiefs.
The ancestors, yeah.
And that part is really cool. It's a gorgeous purple backdrop. And Michael B. Jordan, when he becomes king, for the brief time that he goes through the same ceremony and he runs into his father, Sterling K. Brown's character. And they have this really great moment where I guess it's more of a flashback than it is kind of a conferring.
Sure.
But it's kind of Michael B. Jordan's character's way of being able to say goodbye to his father, but also showing his father that he has progressed beyond even what he wanted to do. So it's kind of like the monster you created.
Yeah.
But it's also not Sterling K. Brown's character's fault.
Right.
Njobu's fault that his son turned out this way.
Well, and it's really interesting. I was really interested by that scene in particular just because the times that we see T'Challa do it, we see him do it a couple times in the movie. It's this like beautiful African landscape, like something you wouldn't seem out of place if you're watching The Lion King or something, like just sort of that sort of prototypical like
African setting.
Africa. But then when Michael B. Jordan does it, it's the apartment from the beginning of the movie, which is like something that like you wouldn't necessarily think. Like it would have made perfect sense if he shows up by the tree, but it makes so much sense for like, it's going to like something that is like an important touchstone for you and for your ancestors, and like for Killmonger, that is his whole thing with his dad. So he shows up in this like sort of mystic version of his crappy Oakland apartment and talks to his dad, which is such an interesting little like,
which again is a flashback because his dad is promising him like one day I'll take you to Wakanda, and now he is in Wakanda and he's king, and it's definitely not what Njobu planned on having, like not how he planned on having any of this take place. Yeah, it's
like weird, like part flashback, part like passing of the mantle, because I think they're all supposed to be these like sort of, I think they're sort of supposed to be talked about like weird drug hallucinations.
Yeah.
So it is such an interesting thing where we're like intercutting with sometimes when he walks in, he shows up and he's the kid version of himself. But then we also see
there's a turning point in the scene where
there's a point where he becomes
hard, and he becomes an adult Eric Stevens Killmonger.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. Just setting it there, I was struck by it just because it's such a thing that it's a small thing that informs a lot about the character and where his head's at and where he's coming from. Just even by having him walk through the door and being in the apartment instead of like showing up at the tree or whatever.
Yeah, and it's a really powerful moment. It's a really good scene too.
Yeah.
Like I said, Sterling K. Brown's he's gonna win tons of awards in his lifetime as an actor. I don't know how long his contract with This Is Us is in there, or how many seasons he's in for that, but as long as he's on that show, I'm gonna keep watching it.
Yeah.
He's fantastic in that show, and I'll go see any movie he's in. I just picked up Marshall this Christmas. I haven't watched it yet, but that's Chadwick Boseman, Sterling K. Brown, Anthony Mackie in that movie as well. It's about Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch this movie, like especially after seeing Black Panther. I'm like, I need to get this in my DVD player now.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for like anything Sterling K. Brown is in. So and that scene with Michael B. Jordan is fantastic. I don't think they ever actually appear on screen together. It's a bunch of cuts where they're just talking to each other.
Yeah.
So I feel like that plays into it too, because there's that divide, because he never really got to have that time with his dad. Where T'Challa, almost everything is they're at least in frame together.
Yeah.
So I think there's some symbolism to be done there.
Although I think they do the second time that T'Challa goes into it in a similar way, and that one maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but that would track, because that second scene is also a really important one.
It's where T'Challa realizes what kind of king he wants and needs
and
to
it's
be.
also like after after he has learned the truth that his dad not only did this thing, killed his brother for arguably justifiable reasons, but then also abandoned
his nephew.
Yeah, a kid who had a rightful spot, who would not have unraveled the fabric of the nation if they brought him back with him or something. So once he's learned the truth of this original sin after previously revering his dad, he goes in and he's been beaten. He's basically on the verge of death, and his dad is like, all right, come on to the afterlife. Maybe this is a real afterlife. Maybe it's a hallucination, whatever. But he's like, no, I got to go back, and also, you really screwed it up.
You can swear on this podcast.
Oh, okay,
if you want to.
Well, yeah, you really fucked it up. This is all because you abandoned a child, and just because that's the way we've always done things doesn't make it right. That's such a powerful scene, and I think if I'm remembering right, if I can speak, that's a similar kind of setup where we're seeing T'Challa alone in the frame, and then we're cutting between that and T'Chaka and the various kings and queens of past, but we're not seeing them together. So I
think we see them together when they come face to face, but then I think you're right where it's a bunch of cuts where they're not in frame together.
So that could also be very intentional cutting where there's now a divide there, and even though they have this scene previously where Nakia tells him no man is perfect, so kings have to do bad things, but this is sort of a thing where he has to forge a new and very different path that other previous kings probably would have said that's not good or too far or something.
Let's move on to the final fight.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about what Black Panther sets up beyond the MCU, or beyond within the MCU. The final fight does end up being the Panther versus Panther, but in the context of the story, it makes sense. It does make a lot of sense, yeah. It's not like, Iron Man's fighting another Iron Man because some guy stole his technology, or it's Captain America's fighting the Winter Soldier, who is basically another Captain America. It's because Eric Killmonger has become the king, he is also now the new Black Panther.
Yeah.
And so now he has his own suit, and T'Challa still has his because Shuri took the necklace before they abandoned Wakanda after Killmonger became the new king. So it works because T'Challa now has his suit, and Killmonger is technically the rightful Black Panther, although also technically not, because the fight is not over. The fight that I'm referring to is the coronation fight, where they have to fight either to the death or into submission.
Yeah, and neither one happened for, he throws him off the cliff. Killmonger throws T'Challa off the cliff, so everyone's like, he's dead.
But it ends up that
he's not dead.
M'Baku's tribe finds him, and they keep him alive. They give him the Black Panther herb to heal him. And that's a great moment, too, where M'Baku passes up the chance to take the herb to make him even stronger.
Well, several characters, too, do as well, where,
Nakia...
There's a bit where Ramonda is like, you should take it. And I saw it opening night. I was sitting next to my girlfriend, and, she also loved the movie. She's very here for Lupita. She's very here for Shuri, for everybody. And, she says, you should take it. And, I see her, fists go up a little bit, yes, do it. But then she gives, a perfectly reasonable explanation for, oh, no, that's not my thing. That wouldn't do us any good if I did that. And then, arguably, M'Baku would have been able to do something with that, because he's got the army. He's a king or chieftain. I'm not totally clear on.
He's a chieftain.
I'm not totally clear on the relationship between that tribe and the other tribes. But then when he realizes, this dude's alive. I haven't told you yet that he's alive. I've got him here. He because he's the character who earlier in the movie was like, I'm the one who's going to fight you for the right to do this.
Yeah, I want to be king.
Yeah,
I'm the one that's going to lead Wakanda into greatness.
Yeah, and he's the dude who's like, I'm not. I could take this right now, eat this thing, and go do my thing. But he ends up being a pretty honorable character because he's like, okay, well, he's not actually dead. If there's a way to save him, we should save him. Mm. And that's the point where he kind of becomes. He's sort of like a comic relief character in that scene up to that point where you mentioned the thing.
Yeah, but I think that's intentional to build up that honorable.
Yeah, and that's the point where he makes the turn where he's not just an antagonistic character. He becomes okay, he's something more interesting than that.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see more out of M'Baku. But this Panther versus Panther fight, It is a little difficult to watch because again, you can relate to what Eric wants to do, and you definitely understand T'Challa's motivations, and they're fairly evenly matched, and it basically comes down to who can get the killing blow in first.
Yeah.
But the fight is just, it's not your typical Marvel movie fight. They end up on a vibranium tramway where they have to use like sound suppressors, which negates vibranium, which I thought they were going to blow up some vibranium or something because they were making a big deal about how vibranium can be explosive due to the sound waves it generates. But they actually end up just using the sound depressors to negate the Panther suits.
Yeah, so you have this kind of cool visual during the fight where periodically the suits sort of become like, they're sort of like breaking down, like they never totally go away, but like there are like spots in them where like the nanites that build them
so
are sort of like receding.
Areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, this fight, it's difficult to watch because again, you understand the plight of Eric and what he wants to do, and obviously T'Challa is the hero of the story, so obviously you know he's going to win. But T'Challa gives him a moment where he's like, we can still heal you after the killing blow is made. That's a powerful moment because, you know, they're offering him redemption, and he says, no, I'd rather die than live in chains.
Well, yeah, and he specifically references like slaves who threw themselves over boats on the way to the colonies, who were like, we know that it's better to die than live in bondage.
Yeah.
So that's like, and so his whole thing is like, his ending is very tragic and sad, and it's like, you realize, okay, you were at the point where you were like literally on the verge of like starting a new empire by like destroying the world, like the world as we know it. So like you can't totally get with him there, but I see we're like up to the point where you say, let's arm everybody and like see what happens. Up until that point, you're like, okay, well, I'm with you so far.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Because I think there's a point in the one scene where he's doing like his throne room thing, where he's like, so every single time black people have been oppressed and risen up and been beaten down because we didn't have the weapons. Where were you guys? You guys were there. You guys were here, and you had the weapons. Where were you? And like, you're like, well, yeah. I mean, in the world where this country exists, it is sort of unconscionable that they wouldn't.
They would turn a blind eye. Yeah, even if ignorant.
Even if it's not slavery, if it's like, oh, maybe it's
there's some apartheid going on in South Africa.
Yeah, in literally on your continent, or police brutality, or Jim Crow, or anything else. Prison industrial complex. Like, where are you guys to like say, hey, stop doing that? We have the power to stop you. So like, you can see where maybe I'm not along with you to say, yeah, we should overthrow all other governments and rule the world, but I'm with you where like you're holding their feet to the fire as well, Wakanda's feet to the fire as well.
Yeah. And so it like I said at the beginning in the non-spoilers, this is a superhero movie, but it's a superhero movie that has something to say, and if people watch it, I don't want to say properly, but if people look at it intuitively, it's supposed to open up a conversation.
Sure.
And it's a conversation that a lot of people that watch sports don't really want to have. Most of you know what I'm referring to. I'm going to leave it vague if you don't. But yeah, it's a conversation that needs to happen because we definitely are still living in a world where people are being oppressed and people are not being given opportunities that they deserve. Mm. And it's not infringing on the rights of the majority. But read a comic book sometime.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Comic books are inherently political. Captain America.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think, and there's something I was mentioning before is like so much of Killmonger's motivation is rooted in like the sins of Wakanda, which, are fictional, are made up. You could have done probably anything with that faction of the story. But also so much of the fact that the parts of Africa that are kind of depressed and like sort of downtrodden are very often that way because of British and American colonialism and imperialism, which is something that he also embodies, that he's also Everett, Martin Freeman's character, mentions that sort of stuff by name. So it's like, it's an interesting thing where like they're not really commenting on it too hard. That's just a facet of his character. They're not doing a whole lot of stuff to say, and also American imperialism is bad, but you know, it's there. It's there, and it's not something where like, well, Wakanda's the villain here. It's also like, oh yeah, but also like you can see a world where Wakanda would be like, we don't want any part of that because all these other nations around us were not like us. They weren't lucky enough to be able to close off their borders, and also they were demolished when people showed up with ships, and then
and Wakanda, while not entirely. Wakanda's not entirely unjustified in their thinking, too,
right,
because they advanced beyond a certain point. While, yes, they could share this technology with the world, they've seen what the world does with technology.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, why would they want to share this technology if people are just going to turn it back on them or just go and take care of, try and conquer other places? So,
well, yeah, and it's a thing.
It's a double-edged sword, and I think the movie does a really good job of, again, trying to get you to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think this movie is something where almost every position, even the ones that are like T'Chaka, right? Like he is a character who we find out eventually did something that is like incontrovertibly wrong. He killed a father and then left his child, which is like a child who could and rightfully come and lived in his country. Based on what we know, you can understand his position that gets him there as far as his thinking goes. So like it's an interesting movie. It's an interesting in that no one character is like really wrong. Like a lot of their sort of goals are wrong, sort of their methods are wrong, but like their ideologies are generally, you can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, they're justified and you can even relate to them.
Yeah.
Which is, again, where Michael B. Jordan and as Eric Killmonger is probably at least top 3, if not top 2, or maybe even best Marvel villain ever. Because he is now dead, he's not going to get that opportunity to reach Loki status, but I think he's going to end up being top 3 just because, again, we still have the opportunity to get more Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting Loki for at least one more movie. I'm pretty sure he's going to bite it in the first 10 minutes of Infinity War.
I'd buy that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to hand over the Tesseract and he's going to bite it. But to get that one movie performance and just elevate, again, the standard of what a Marvel movie villain should be.
Yeah.
A comic book movie villain, not just Marvel.
Yeah.
Because DC's kind of failed at this too.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to what this movie, the potential of this movie and the fact that they reached it.
Yeah.
It's a movie that has something to say and a conversation that needs to happen. And the people that don't like that don't need to have the conversation then.
Well, yeah. And it's something that's happening. It's been happening for a little while, but it's starting to happen more in comics where like, you know, with video games a couple of years back where people are like, we don't want politics in our stuff, but it's like not possible. It's not possible for that to happen because it seeps in every part of our lives. But then B, like these things have been doing this for a long time. You just have not. You've either not been paying attention or you're reading stuff that aligns with what you already believe to be true.
I loved the quote unquote fallout that the new Wolfenstein game had, where they're like, hunt some Nazis. This game has been in development for probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And they're about to release it, and that's their campaign. Wolfenstein has always been about an alternate universe where Nazis reign.
Right.
And all of a sudden people are like, we should leave politics out of this.
Yeah, like all of a sudden, and to be fair, part of that was like they were because last year in politics in America in 2017, for any number of reasons, we saw a weird resurgence of people that were sympathizing with Nazis, and the marketing for that game like leaned into that super hard. Like, hey, you want to bash some Nazi skulls?
Hey,
is it because there was a huge conversation in some circles like, is it okay to punch someone if they say they're Nazi? Like, first of all, hell yes, it is. You can't see me, but I'm wearing a shirt that says as much right now. So part of it was like they leaned into that the zeitgeist of the moment pretty hard, but also like a lot of the people there were the people who were like, can you just like leave stuff out of my games? Like, no, like it's not possible. Like you can't play a game like Call of Duty, any number of them, which is like drenched in the kind of stuff we've been talking about, like American exceptionalism and imperialism and colonialism, and then turn around and say like, well, Wolfenstein's taking it too far. Like, it's all there. It just depends on which one is aligning with your worldview.
Very good point. I didn't even think about that one. I just thought it was funny.
Well, yeah.
Because, again, Wolfenstein has always been about...
Well, yeah, and there is that part, too, where it's like all of a sudden, like this game where the first one is, oh, you are literally running around a castle, like stabbing Nazis and their dogs. And that now, not even that going that far back, this is the sequel to a game that came out like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, the most recent first Wolfenstein. And it doesn't seem like anybody had a problem then.
One of the very first Xbox 360 games I remember being advertised was, I forget the name of it, but it was about an alternate universe where Nazis won and took over America.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it right now, but it's basically Man in the High Castle, and you're leading a resistance to take down the Nazis in America.
Yeah.
Back in 2005, no one cared.
Yeah, and I could probably go for another hour about how messed up it is that we don't automatically...
Oh, you're a Nazi. You're a shithead.
Well, yeah, that's not the default position for too many people on all sides of the political spectrum. That it's not a given that if you're a Nazi, you're a bad person, and anyone who associates with you is sort of bad by default because they're willing to at least overlook that. That's the world we have built for ourselves.
Apparently. So
that
got a little, yeah. But I mean, again, it's a discussion that should happen. I know people don't listen to this podcast for that. So I do apologize if we turned you off a little bit. We do tend to try and steer away from politics. But I mean, if you don't agree with Nazis bad,
right,
maybe you don't want to listen to my podcast.
Well, and I guess I would say like people don't even necessarily go that far. Like, even if you're like, okay, I hate Nazis, right? But my comic books or whatever, my comic book movies, I want them to be as politically neutral as possible. And maybe some of them are listening right now and they're upset that we're talking about this, which is fine. But I would say, like you mentioned earlier, like this stuff has been in these comic books for forever. Like, it's
from the moment they happened. Like,
yeah,
you turned me on to listen up A-holes, and I listened to the Captain America First Avenger episode, and I did not realize or know that Steve Rogers was intentionally made to look like the Aryan ideal.
Yeah.
I didn't, and that makes perfect sense, and it's awesome that they did that.
Well, yeah, and it seems, and something about that also, that cover, that first issue of Captain America Comics where he is punching out Hitler, seems innocuous because it's Hitler, but it was published at a time when America was not involved in World War II, and there was a not insignificant portion of the American people who were like, kind of, this was obviously before a lot of the breadth of what they were doing, what the Nazis were doing, was public, but there was a not insignificant number of people who were sympathetic with the Nazis in the United States. There was like an American Nazi Party. So
yeah, they even apparently had a camp like just outside of New York.
Yeah, so that was a controversial cover, like it was a very political statement, like a very intentional political statement. Yeah.
So again, if you don't want politics in your comics, maybe take a look in the mirror and be like, do I need to have a different discussion?
Well,
do I need to look at something different?
And like I said a couple times, I think a lot of times when people think of something as apolitical, they're just looking at things that happen to align with the politics that they think of as neutral, which is not quite the same. And we could talk about that for forever, but I have a feeling that we want to move on.
So let's move on to the implications of what happens at the end of Black Panther and what that means for the rest of the Marvel universe. T'Challa takes his place as king, and he's decided that Wakanda is going to help the world. It's going to have a greater presence in the world, and it's going to start helping at-risk neighborhoods and trying to improve the world around it. So you see T'Challa at the basketball court just outside the apartment complex in Oakland, where his uncle was murdered and his cousin was orphaned. Yep. And he reveals his Black Panther jet to the kids playing basketball. And it's a great moment. And then we get a post-credits scene that is very reminiscent of Tony Stark's I Am Iron Man moment. We don't get that I Am Iron Man moment, but you still get a really great speech that I feel like should have been in the actual movie, so people didn't walk out on it.
Yeah, the scene is like he's giving this, honestly, sort of like it's like a sort of like a not, I want to say generic only because it's very short on specifics, where he's like, hey, I'm from Wakanda, we have to all come together, we have to be one people, one tribe, and like in the context of this universe, everyone thinks that Wakanda is like a third world country. So like the people at the UN are like, well, what are
a bunch of farmers gonna do?
Yeah, what do you have to offer? And like it ends in this him like
he just has like this smirk.
He has a smile like, oh, you don't even know. And honestly, like I think I mentioned this to you before. I originally thought that probably should have been like the end of the movie, but then also the scene ends, or the actual movie ends, where they're in the basketball court, and this, you know, they've revealed the ship, and like a bunch of kids are like, whoa, that's crazy, that's cool. But there's one kid that sticks behind who like walks up to T'Challa and he's like, hey, who are you? Which is like I mentioned before, is like a big like, who is this guy? Like that's sort of his theme of the movie. So it's also an appropriate way to end it. But I remember thinking, like, I found myself thinking, like, in as much as the post-credit scenes are quote unquote not really part of the movie, that one I felt like should have been part of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. And the other post-credit scene we get is Shuri going to visit Bucky, but the scene opens with 3 kids just kind of standing over him, waiting for him to wake up, which our friend Lewis was with the group that I went with Thursday night, and like you just see these kids staring at the camera, and he just goes, oh, hello. And so it just sits there for about 10, 15 seconds, and then finally, oh, he's waking up, better run. And we find out that it's Bucky, and we see Bucky, he still doesn't have his new arm or anything yet that we've seen in the Infinity War trailer. I had to laugh a little bit because obviously his hair is a little bit longer at this point, but he looked a little bit like Brendan Fraser from George of the Jungle.
Yeah, he looked silly.
He looked a little silly, and I just really wanted him to be like, nice butt flap.
Yeah, and that scene really just establishes like, oh, hey, he's still cured. Around and he's awake. He's awake now, which apparently means he's cured.
Yeah, because he said at the end of Civil War that he should stay under until he's cured. Which again, I mentioned in the Black Panther Prelude comic, Shuri cures him fairly quickly after getting there.
It's fine. I didn't just see a bunch of stuff where I didn't need that to be part of Infinity War, the intrigue of whether or not he's going to be.
Yeah, you would assume as much.
A Manchurian candidate anymore. Yeah.
So, but what does Black Panther lead up to for Infinity War, since this is our last movie before we get this May release?
Well, I was honestly a little surprised because I think I also mentioned it to you before, where the Infinity War trailers we've seen, the action is largely in what we can assume to be Wakanda or an African country near Wakanda.
Yeah, just outside Wakanda at least.
You know, like the army's fighting in these big, huge fields. So my expectation was there would be some MacGuffin in this movie that, even if they didn't single it out, would be something that was obviously the last Infinity Stone, like, you know, the way they've revealed MacGuffins of various movies to be, which didn't happen. So I guess we're just going to see.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that the last Infinity Stone is not in Wakanda.
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler said that they already had their thing in vibranium for this movie.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so they didn't want to like overcharge it with another MacGuffin or another item. So it makes perfect sense that they wouldn't do that. So it doesn't rule it out. And I raised this on one of my message boards that I'm on, that maybe the vibranium is still the Soul Stone, which I think it's complete conjecture right now that it's the Soul Stone. Some people still think that it might be Heimdall, but I don't know if he's confirmed to be in the movie. If he is, it's very early on.
Yeah, but I'm not sure either.
I argue that it can't be Heimdall because in the Thor the Dark World post-credits scene, they have the Tesseract, and then Sif and the Warriors 3 are bringing the Ether, which is revealed to be a new Infinity Stone. And they say it's not wise to keep more than one Infinity Stone in one place. So why is Heimdall an exception to that rule then?
Yeah, that's a weird bit of fan theorizing that I hadn't heard, and it just seems like it would, I don't know, that doesn't strike me.
Yeah, I mean, because it could just easily be magic blessed upon him by Odin, so it works either way.
Is the idea that like his powers come from
because he can see every soul in the universe or something like that?
Yeah, I guess I can see where people will get there. I don't think I'm crazy about that. I think it's more likely just to be some artifact in the throne room or something. We never knew that's what this was. It was just this jewel we found, and then
but the main reason I want to bring up like what this movie sets up is that it actually doesn't set up much. It's very much a standalone movie within the Marvel universe. Like they have two little ties to it, really. You have Claw, and then you have the mention of Civil War. Then the rest of it really is pretty self-contained.
Which I think has been largely true of a lot of the quote-unquote like Phase 3 movies. I think in the second one we saw a lot of movies that were like looking forward, and I think and then a lot of the movies we've gotten this time around have been like trying to launch new series like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man in its way, Black Panther. I guess Ant-Man is technically here as well.
Ant-Man was Phase 2.
Okay.
It was the closer to Phase 2.
Okay. Well, yeah. Then it's so many of these movies are, I guess Thor and Captain America were both kind of doing their thing as well. But a lot of the movies we've had in this phase have been, okay, we need to start setting up for whatever happens after, because
we're losing Captain America.
A lot of our actors may or may not be dead or retired after this.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's been a lot the case for a lot of these movies, and I feel like they're generally stronger for it.
I definitely love this movie. I think the next episode we're going to do, not you and I specifically, but the next episode that we'll do for the podcast is ranking the Marvel movies, and Black Panther has definitely jumped into my top 5.
I would say that's probably true for me as well. It's just such a strong. It's got such a strong identity. It's got so many rich characters that can kind of establish what they're about without I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Expositing.
Without a bunch of expositing, with sort of an economy of screen time. Like I was mentioning before, we have a couple characters who tell you what they're about and tell you what they're about well with just a couple of scenes.
Normally on this podcast, when we've done movie reviews, we say this is either a must-see or a hard pass. I don't think this has to really get a rating, because I feel like, again, this movie, regardless of whether you like superhero movies or not, needs to be seen.
Yeah.
This movie kind of transcends superhero movies. It uses the superhero movie as a platform to make a statement. And I think it should be seen by as many people as possible. And I don't think I mentioned the weekend box office. We don't have the full weekend box office because of when we're recording, but it did take in $25.2 million from Thursday screenings, which is $2 million shy of the highest grossing Marvel Thursday screening, which is Age of Ultron. Its Friday total, including that $25.2 million, was 75.5.
I think it also is like was like the fastest or most in like pre-sales.
It's sold the most tickets within the first 24 hours for any Marvel movie ever,
which is great.
Yeah, so and it's all well deserved. This movie is fantastic in my opinion. Regardless of your stance on superhero movies, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast if you don't like superhero movies. But I definitely say this is a must-see. Obviously, from what you're saying, definitely a must-see. Yeah. Any final thoughts you have there that you want to share on the movie?
No, not specifically. Just it's real good. And I guess I would say, in lieu of any thoughts about the movie, I didn't really get to it, but there were a lot of things. I don't know which one follows the other, but there were a lot of like visual cues that I saw that were kind of shared with the current Ta-Nehisi Coates run with the comics. Like those fighter ships are like straight out of those books.
Okay.
I don't know if like maybe Coogler got his inspiration from that, or if maybe Ta-Nehisi, or I guess Brian Starfleet is the artist, got some advanced tips on the art style there. But there's a lot of like stuff here that is sort of shared visually with that run that's ongoing, which is very good, and I would recommend people check it out.
Yeah, I know we share an account, so I it's definitely in my things of stuff I need to do while I have my time off, and if I ever actually have a moment of rest with a kid. But my iPad is currently out of commission, so I have to find a new way of reading it. And I don't really care for reading comics on my phone.
Yeah, it's not
so
great.
Small.
But like Ta-Nehisi Coates, Christopher Priest, Reginald Hudlin, like those are all like strong, like sort of seminal runs with Black Panther that we didn't talk much about the comics, but those are all things that like those are sort of the runs that I feel like people talk about when they talk about Black
Yeah,
Panther
because
comics.
Black Panther, as far as the main pop culture goes, doesn't really have a defining run that a lot of people would be able to be like, oh yeah, that's a Black Panther story.
Yeah, they're there, but like not everybody knows about them.
Yeah.
So it's like I think those are a couple of the good ones, and there's probably more than I don't, because I feel like I've read a few things, but I'm definitely no scholar. There's definitely those are good places to get you started
Yeah,
if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely some good little thoughts there for anyone that's interested in reading the comics. So we're gonna wrap it up there. Matt, thanks for graciously
absolutely.
coming down and hanging out with me to talk about this wonderful movie.
I had a good time. Hopefully, I don't sound too much like an idiot.
I'll edit it so you do. Don't worry. Do you want to share any of your social media?
Sure. I guess the best place, if you're at all interested, to follow me is on Twitter. I'm Matt at mrliparota, LIPAROTA at Twitter.
And you can always follow me on Twitter at Josh_Scar. Scar is spelled SKAAR, like Scar, son of Hulk. You can follow Talking Smack on Facebook and Twitter. We're on Twitter at Talking Smack Pod. Smack is SMAC. And you can always email the podcast as well at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Share your thoughts, feedbacks, concerns, questions, whatever. We're open to everything. So thanks again for listening, and roll that theme music.